Welcome to another video with Money Masterclass 101. In today's video, we tackle the personal finance fundamentals, 6 of them, that you need to make sure you tick the boxes on if you want to get good with your money. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with somebody who has a question on personal finance. Now, first things first is we've spoken about finances in depth. If you've been following our channel since the beginning, you'll see from budgeting to investing to all the things all around that. We've delved into it extensively. Now, we're midway through 2025, and if you're still struggling with getting your money right, these 6 steps that I'm going to be taking you through are things that you can implement, review your finances, and make sure you're on the right track. So the first one we need to get into is your budgeting basics. Now, I need to start off by saying that there's no right or wrong way on how you should budget, right? But some good fundamentals that you need to look at is making sure that you're not spending more than what you're making. You have to make sure that your income versus your expenses are in line. And some guiding principles on that is the 50-30-20 rule. Now, how we apply that is to generally say, all right, looking at 50% of your expenses need to go towards needs. So these are things like rent, paying your bond, medical aid, groceries, all those things that you absolutely need and you cannot go without. If you're spending more than 50% on needs, start to have a look and see where can you cut down a little bit. What are some of the things that you perceive as needs but are actually wants? And see how you can trim that down to get closer to the 50% mark. Then we look at 30% of that needs to be looking at spent on wants. Now, your wants are, let's say, holidays, saving for holidays, or excess things that you don't necessarily need, but you would want them, right? Which means that if you had to cut them out of your budget, you wouldn't necessarily die. And then the 20% needs to go towards savings and investments. We need to look at creating an emergency fund. You need to contribute towards a retirement fund, either with your employer or in your personal capacity. And you need to focus on settling your debt. Debt is the biggest problem you face with wealth creation. You'll very rarely find an interest rate on a linked debt, let's say a credit card, a clothing account, or a loan, which is lower than the interest rate you'll get in a savings or an investment account. So focus on that, and you should be good to go from a budgeting perspective. The second one we look at is emergency funding fundamentals. Now, how we approach emergency funding is based on your current need. So if you look again at your budget, and let's say you're earning 20,000 Rand a month after tax and all deductions, and we apply the 50-30-20 rule, if you've got 50% of that is allocated to your needs, which means that you're spending 10,000 Rand a month on that, we need to work with that as your baseline. Saying, okay, we want to save up 3 to 6 times monthly needs or monthly expenses. So we will be looking at saving up to a point of 30 to 60,000 Rand to make sure that you have an emergency fund. Now, an emergency fund is actually quite pivotal in your personal finance journey. The reason for that is before we go too deep into worrying about investing, retirement planning, etc., you need to build a strong emergency fund baseline and foundation. If you don't do that, no matter how hard you try to settle your debt, grow your net worth, or invest, whenever an emergency arises, you're going to find yourself going back to the credit and having to use it if you don't have a proper emergency fund set up. Briefly, an emergency fund, you can save that with a bank, gives you the accessibility, it's always on hand. Just the long-term con about saving in the bank is getting better than inflation returns, where that you can get if you structure a conservatively structured unit trust and you choose, for example, a well-performing income fund, you'll get better returns long-term. The one con maybe on a unit trust, totally your opinion, is there's a little bit more admin involved on making withdrawals, but again, on a unit trust, it is flexible, so there's no penalties or lock-in periods. The third one we look at is your debt payoff strategies. And there's a reason why they have to go in this order. So if you haven't sorted out your emergency fund and you're focusing on paying off debt, just stop, take a breather, and go one step back and sort out the emergency fund. Now, when it comes to debt, there's generally two approaches we can follow to settle debt. The first one is what we know as the snowball effect. Now, the snowball effect will help you where you list all of your debts down, line item per line item, looking at which one you have to pay off based on lowest payment first up until the highest. The snowballing effect has got a psychological benefit to it. Let's say, for example, you're settling your lowest debt from a payment perspective, which is 200 Rand a month. You keep your commitments as is and you keep paying your debt. And once the 200 Rand is finished and you've settled that debt, you take that free cash flow that you've now opened up and you put that to your second debt that you need to settle, which is maybe 300 Rand. You then in essence be putting 500 Rand in. And so you keep on snowballing it off. And psychologically, that will help you, keeping your expenses the same, but snowballing your debt off. The second one we can look at is the avalanche. And how we approach that is purely based on your interest rates. We're looking at tackling the highest interest rate debt first, all the way down to the lowest. The reason why this one could possibly work for you is by tackling the highest interest rate first, what you're doing long term is you're helping yourself save on the payments towards the debt and the cost of credit in the background, which we don't always see. Now, once we've got these three steps in place, let's take an introduction into investing. So we've got saving underway, we've got an emergency fund, and we've developed the habit of managing our money well via our budget and settling our debt. Now we start looking at investing. Investing can simply be broken down into three time horizons. These time horizons being short-term, medium-term, and long-term investing. And there's various ways to invest. You can invest with your financial advisor who would give you advice and structure investments for you from a product perspective, as well as an asset allocation perspective for a fee and help you manage those investments. You can take the risk on yourself to invest through the likes of Easy Equities or other online platforms. Just know that then the risk lies solely on you to choose the different types of asset allocations and blend them together to make sure you have the right performing portfolio. My 2 cents, get a professional to help you. They'll help you and narrow it down and give you good advice on which way to go and how to approach this, as it can be quite complex. There's different types of funds that you can look at. There's index funds, there's active funds, there's passive funds, there's hedge funds. So with such complexity around investing, make sure to meet with somebody that knows what they're talking about and can give you good, unbiased advice, and also leverage off of people maybe in your network who have done it before and are successful. The fifth one we need to look at is you have to also consider protecting your wealth. The endeavor to wealth creation is not just one-sided where we have to grow our wealth, but also focus on protecting it. Now, we protect our wealth via the means of insurance. Now, consider the fact if you don't have medical aid or a hospital plan and you need to be admitted to hospital, what would that look like on your net worth? What effects would it have financially? Let's say you had R1 million saved up in a money market account or an investment. If you get admitted to hospital, how would you access that? And how would that affect that money that you've worked so hard to save up? So protecting your wealth becomes crucially important. A few things you need to factor in when looking at protecting your wealth is, first things first is you need to protect your life. If you have financial dependence and somebody's reliant on you or you have debt, make sure you have a life cover. One that goes directly with that is disability cover. God forbid you're no longer able to work, how will your debt be settled? And how will you earn an income? That's where we look at disability cover. And another complementary benefit to that is severe illness or dread disease cover. You must remember that you are your biggest asset. So if something happens to you, how are you going to continue generating that income to ensure that your life standard that you've built up stays the way it is and is uninterrupted? Another one you need to look at is all of your physical assets need to be protected via the means of short-term insurance or commercial insurance if you're a business owner. Too many times things happen and we forget to put insurance in place. Car gets bumped, or it's stolen, or you accidentally spill a cup of coffee on your laptop. How is that going to be replaced? Because where will you find 50, 100 or even 200,000 Rand just to go and finance a new vehicle or purchase a new laptop? So don't neglect protecting your wealth in this important step. Then in terms of updates around 2025, just factor in what's going on in South Africa at the moment. We're one of the countries with the highest unemployment rates worldwide. So we're sitting with an employment crisis. That directly links to entrepreneurship. So if you're watching this video and you've got entrepreneurial flares, consider how you can attribute towards this problem and create a solution of starting a small business, employing 1 or 2 people, and helping solve that crisis. We've seen from the effects of COVID, we're coming off of the back of some high interest rates for a prolonged period of time. Interest rates are at least starting to go down. So that's putting less pressure on households from a credit perspective and also helping so that the cost of credit is a little bit cheaper. But with that being said, the investment markets are changing. So a lot of people are not looking to invest in money markets or conservatively structured investments anymore, but maybe towards a bit more equity-based or long-term investing where we can get some better returns. A few other things you can consider going into the rest of this year is try implementing what we know as a no-buy challenge. Go for a few days or set out one specific day as a start, or maybe 2 a week, and say these days I'm not going to spend money on anything unnecessary. So back to point number 1 on the budget, unless it's a need, I'm not going to purchase it. So if it's wants or anything extra that I don't necessarily need, I'm not going to spend money. That way will then help you to gain control of that instant gratification that we so easily fall into and help you get control of your money. So if you've liked this video, make sure to like, subscribe and share it with somebody, and stay tuned for the next one. Like to see you soon. Cheers.